Okay, number one, the DHS funding bill. In 2025, when ICE received funding from the One Big Beautiful Bill of $75 billion, there were no guardrails or conditional oversight on the use of the money. We have seen what the lack of oversight of ICE has done for this federal agency. So, U.S. citizens have been unlawfully detained for the color of their skin or the accent that they have. Children have been used as bait and then sent to detention facilities. They've overrun a U.S. city and terrorized them for months. They have tear gassed children. They've murdered people in the streets, then labeled them as domestic terrorists, and then refused to investigate the incidents. This is due to a rush of trying to grow this agency very quickly. They have given men without adequate background checks firearms, 6 weeks of training, and then pushed them right out into a field of high-stress situations. As of Friday evening, we've reached a partial government shutdown of DHS. DHS includes FEMA and TSA, so not just ICE and CBP. It's not great that it's shut down, but there are guardrails that I want put on ICE and CBP before DHS receives any more funding. These are common sense measures that every federal agency should have, and frankly, I'm disgusted that we have to spell it out in the first place, but my demands are a zeroing out of ICE's appropriations funding, a repeal of H.R. 1's $170 billion slush fund for ICE and Border Patrol, a requirement that agents remove their masks and show identification, a ban on arrests without judicial warrants, a ban on roving patrols, racial profiling and arrest quotas, a ban on access to polling locations, schools, daycares, medical facilities, other vulnerable locations, a return of Border Patrol to the border, independent inspectors and oversight of all detention facilities to ensure humane treatment of detainees, some of which are children, and more on that, a ban on the detention and deportation of children, a ban on the use of surveillance technology to track and harass people, and an end to the use of deadly force in the detention and deportation of U.S. citizens and lawfully present immigrants. This detain now and ask questions later is unacceptable. No justice, no peace. We want ICE off our streets. Do not vote to pass any funding package for DHS that does not include these guidelines. Number 2, impeach Pam Bondi. The 401ks may have never been higher, but I would rather never retire. Children trafficked to a hellacious island, but the Dow is over 50,000. That's a slant rhyme. Billionaires make the system turn? Fine. Raise the system and watch it burn. So Pam Bondi, our U.S. Attorney General, brought a burn book to a congressional hearing on the Epstein files. She didn't answer questions about the trafficking and abuse of children. She didn't look at the survivors behind her or apologize to them for releasing their personal info. She and all the other previous AGs of the last decade have re-traumatized the survivors over and over again by denying them justice as the survivors push to have their stories heard. And they have to relive their trauma every time they tell their stories. This should not be a partisan issue. Just because it hasn't been addressed by the people who came before it doesn't mean that Pam Bondi gets a free pass for doing nothing while she is in power. There are many other instances of her abusing power to arrest journalists like Don Lemon, protected by the First Amendment, opening investigations into Donald Trump's political enemies, and other impeachable incidents you can find listed and cited on fivecalls.org. But I am most angry about the political theater she enacted at a hearing about a rich and powerful pedophile ring who trafficked and abused children around the world. How dare you protect the powerful and oppress the weak? That is un-American, because I and my fellow citizens refuse to let that be America anymore. The Epstein Transparency Act was signed into law last year. The due date to release the files, with only redactions for the victims, was December 19th. It's 2 months late. Your department, or Pam Bondi's department, has bungled the redactions on the half and only half of the files that have been released. Pam Bondi is not fit for her position, has abused her power, and has broken the law. I demand articles of impeachment from my senators and my congressmen. Number 5, keep ICE out of our DMV data. This one is for my local representatives, but you can also call your local state senators, representatives, and your governor. ICE wants protesters to know that they're being watched, and it has the technology to back it up. In Minneapolis, ICE officers scanned protesters' faces at demonstrations. They warned that the protesters were going to be added to a government database. Many states also provide ICE with unrestricted access to their DMV data through inlets, a data sharing network for law enforcement agencies across the U.S. This allows ICE agents to gather troves of information on individuals in the field using only their license plates without obtaining a judicial warrant. The result, ICE can determine who protesters are, where they live, where they've been, and who they associate with. Some states have moved to change this, like Illinois and New York, Massachusetts, Minnesota, and Washington. They've already restricted ICE from accessing their DMV data, but other states have not yet followed suit. So I'm calling to demand that my legislators work to curtail ICE's direct access to our DMV data unless they provide a judicial warrant for a criminal investigation. We should join states like New York and Illinois in preventing our personal information from being used to target residents participating in First Amendment protected protests. Number 4, oppose the Save America Act. The new version of this act has passed the House and is now in the Senate. It will probably be stopped by the filibuster, but it's still time to let your reps know how you feel about this bill. This is a bill that requires identification as a U.S. citizen to register to vote, which sounds like common sense. The problem comes from the type of identification required, photo IDs. So the 24th Amendment to the Constitution bans poll taxes, which is when it costs money to be able to vote. A driver's license and a passport cost money. There are no IDs provided freely by the government for U.S. citizens, so there's not a good way to get around this amendment that will make the bill work. Beyond that, the severity of the documents causes undue problems, especially for married women. If you have a passport, you're fine, but the cheapest passport you can get is a passport card for a fee of $65. If you don't have a passport, you will need your driver's license and a birth certificate. Did you take your spouse's last name when you got married like the majority of women do? Well, now your names don't match on the documents and you don't have the proper documentation and you won't be allowed to register. Are you already registered? That's great. Hope you don't move or have to re-register somewhere else. Hope that some error doesn't occur and your name gets knocked off the voter rolls. Do you not have a valid driver's license due to older age or disability or living in a city where you don't use your license? Too bad! Don't let the simplicity of the demand for identification trick you into ignoring the complexity of the issue. Tell your representative to vote no on the SAVE Act. Number 5, keep ICE out of our DMV data. This one is for my local representatives, but you can also call your local state senators, representatives, and your governor. ICE wants protesters to know that they're being watched, and it has the technology to back it up. In Minneapolis, ICE officers scanned protesters' faces at demonstrations. They warned that the protesters were going to be added to a government database. Many states also provide ICE with unrestricted access to their DMV data through inlets, a data sharing network for law enforcement agencies across the U.S. This allows ICE agents to gather troves of information on individuals in the field using only their license plates without obtaining a judicial warrant. The result, ICE can determine who protesters are, where they live, where they've been, and who they associate with. Some states have moved to change this, like Illinois and New York, Massachusetts, Minnesota, and Washington. They've already restricted ICE from accessing their DMV data, but other states have not yet followed suit. So I'm calling to demand that my legislators work to curtail ICE's direct access to our DMV data unless they provide a judicial warrant for a criminal investigation. We should join states like New York and Illinois in preventing our personal information from being used to target residents participating in First Amendment protected protests. That is just 5 reasons I will be calling my representatives this week. You can call, email, or old school mail your representatives, but for people power to work, the people have to be activated and paying attention. Nothing changes unless we make it change. The outrage in me sees the outrage in you. Now, go be a nuisance.